Northrup, author of Money, A Love Story, and I'm here with the Money Love Story series with Arielle Ford, who's the best-selling author of The Soulmate Secret. So you've been an entrepreneur for a while, right? How many years have you been in business for yourself, Arielle?
Oh, goodness. I started my business in 1987, and I shut it down in 2004 and shifted into some other businesses and a startup and doing other things. So I've been around a while.
Nice. Very nice. And I'd love to know, growing up, what did you learn about money or what did you witness about money when it comes to money?
I grew up in a household where there was never enough money. There was always a lot of yelling and screaming and bitching and moaning, complaining about money. So it was, money is scarce. Yeah. Money doesn't grow on trees. There's never enough. There was a lot of fear around money. There were times when I would come home from school and there'd be a lot of upset because the car got repossessed or the water was turned off, or there was always serious issues around money. And then my grandparents were survivors of the Depression. Mm-hmm. So it's a multi-generational conversation of there's never enough and scarcity.
Wow. And then as you spread your wings and left the nest, how did that impact you? How did that show up in your adult life?
Well, I had this huge fear that I was going to become a bag lady, that if I didn't go out really hard, I would end up pushing a shopping cart on the street. So all of my motivation was to make money and to save money and to try and make sure that I didn't end up on the streets. And one of the ways that it showed up is I ended up starting a charity in Los Angeles called the Spare Change Project to raise money for homeless women with children. Wow. And I thought I was doing it because I wanted to make a difference in the world. But one day I was at a luncheon with Martin Sheen's wife, and I was telling her, you know, your husband's the greatest guy in the world because he's always raising money for the homeless, and every time I do a fundraiser, he comes to my press conferences and he speaks out on my behalf, and he's just wonderful. And she started laughing, and she said, well, you're just like him. I said, what are you talking about? She said, do you know why he does all this raising money for the homeless? And I said, yeah, because he's a good guy. And she said, no, because he's scared to death that he's going to be homeless, and so are you.
Whoa.
And I had no idea that that was what was underneath my incredible passion to raise money for homeless women. I was trying to save myself.
Wow.
Yeah, so that's when I decided, you know what, this is a big issue, and I need to find a way to get over it. And I did a lot of personal growth seminars, and I went into therapy, and I actually committed myself to healing my poverty consciousness.
Wow. So most people don't have the consciousness to even know that they have poverty consciousness.
I didn't know.
Right? And so was it her kind of basically calling you out that switched that in you and made you realize, I got to change this?
Yeah, I knew that I didn't want to be a bag lady, but I didn't know that that's what was driving me.
Yeah.
And I didn't know that as long as that what was driving me, I would have no choice but to end up that way.
Yes.
You know, so I'd had enough personal growth work to know, oh, this is a deep issue. This is a wound. In order for me to really have security, I've got to fix this. I've got to understand that I am already prosperous, that I can be more prosperous. And if I looked at it realistically, the truth is there was no possibility I was going to become a bag lady. I had enough friends and my family had grown enough. There was enough money around me that I had a safety net. That wasn't going to happen.
Right. So you had to kind of rewire that and tell basically rewire your belief system.
Yeah, and the way that I did it is by using what we now call law of attraction, but back then it was just manifestation techniques, where I had to get out of my head and into my heart and remember times and places where I felt secure and prosperous. I had to embody that feeling that I am by my very nature a prosperous person. And I had to own my prosperity. Because if you looked at my bank account, there was plenty of money in the bank. I'm a very good manifestor. I'm good at making money. But it was incongruent what was true about that and what I was feeling. So it required a really big shift.
So One of the things that you teach about is love. And you wrote this book called The Soulmate Secret, and I was just part of your summit having to do with soulmates, and it was really a wonderful thing to be a part of. And I'm curious, in your soulmate relationship with your husband, how do you guys relate about money, and how do you keep the communication lines open, since money stress is one of the #1 reasons that couples break up?
Well, it was really interesting because my husband grew up in a very affluent home, you know, the country club lifestyle. Money was never an issue. You know, he grew up with a mother who bought him designer clothes and the finest of everything. And I was raised to shop. You only bought things on sale at the cheapest store possible and had no distinction around quality. So early on, it was stressful because I remember once we were on a book tour, and it started to snow, and we didn't have winter coats, and we had to go buy a winter coat. And he was about to buy this winter coat that cost $600, which was like more than a car payment. I'd never seen a coat that cost so much, and I was appalled that he was going to spend $600 on a coat. And he was shocked because the last time he bought a winter coat, it was $2,000. So in his mind, this was a bargain. And it created stress. And then when I thought about it, it's like, I said, well, how long ago did you buy that $2,000 coat? He said, oh, I've had it for 20 years. So when you amortize $2,000 over 20 years, it's a free coat. But it took me a long time to understand that just because we had different money values didn't mean I couldn't trust him. And so I learned a lot about the value of money and how to use money and how to spend money for high quality as opposed to the cheapest thing possible just to have a coat. So it took us some time. We're at a place now, we just celebrated our 15th anniversary, where we totally trust each other. We understand, you know, I sometimes slip into poverty consciousness and he just laughs at me. And I sometimes, you know, he loves to pick up the check for everything. And I always just say, why are you picking up the check? He's like, well, it makes me feel good, you know, and there's a value to that. So, you know, it was a process, but, you know, for me, it's about a willingness to understand. He was willing to understand where I came from. I was willing to understand where he came from. And then we just would create, well, what's in the highest and best good of our relationship? How is it going to work to serve us both?
Nice. Now, you talked about, you know, he said, it feels good to do this, and there's a value in that. So obviously money is value, and we buy things that we value. We trade dollars for what we value. So for you in your life, what values are really important to you, and what do you put a high value on?
I really like experiences. So I'd much rather spend a lot of money on travel than on a piece of furniture or a piece of clothing. You know, the clothing will come and go. You know, although I have to say the things that I've spent the most amount of money on, you know, I keep the longest and they're the most precious to me. But, you know, given a choice between things and experience, you know, I'd rather have the amazing meal in Rome than, you know, 3 more sweaters.
Now, I actually am, I value that same thing. I'm definitely the same way. And for you, as you are, you know, you're out there, you've been an entrepreneur for quite a while, what kind of hiccups, obviously you shared about the poverty consciousness, and you shared about starting the work with the homeless women because you were trying to save yourself. What other hiccups have you come across, whether it's raising your rates, whether it's feeling uncomfortable about making a lot of money? Have you ever had any of those challenges along the way?
Well, when I was running my business, I didn't know, I don't have an MBA, I just have a bachelor's degree. And so I started my business really with no experience and not knowing what I was doing, just this big desire to have my own thing. And I started the business, and 4 years into the business, we hit a recession. This was in the early 90s, and I was living in LA. I didn't really know what a recession was. I just know that I lost 65% of my clients in a 1-month period. And I had 4,000 square feet of office space on Wilshire Boulevard in Beverly Hills and 8 full-time employees, and suddenly went from having tons of money to almost no money, and not knowing what to do, not knowing when it was going to end. And I had never really worked hard to get clients. They just fell in the door. They just came to me, and suddenly they were rushing out the door. So it was a really painful time because I had to downsize drastically. I went into a lot of fear. I got sick. My relationship fell apart. Like the whole world crashed and crumbled around me. And what was good about that, at the time I didn't see it, but what ultimately came out of it was that I realized I wasn't enjoying my business. I was enjoying making a lot of money, but once the clients left, I was so happy they were gone because they were really pain. And so while I was sitting in this, like I was down to one half-time employee in an office the size of a closet, trying to reinvent myself, I thought, well, if I have to restart and rebuild, who am I and what do I want to do? And it was very clear I didn't want to recreate the old business, which was a corporate PR firm. But I didn't know what was next. I had no clue. And it took about a year of just sort of sitting in this, living off my credit cards place, when one day I thought to myself, you know what, if I'm going to continue to do PR, then I only want to represent people, places, and things that are doing something good for the planet.
Cool.
That's it. And I don't know what it looks like, but that's the new golden rule.
Yep.
And within a short amount of time of declaring that's who I was a PR person for people, places, and things, improving the planet, then I'll tell you who my next 4 clients were. The first one was Louise Hay, the second one was Deepak Chopra, the third was Marianne Williamson, and the fourth was Wayne Dyer.
I love it.
This was in 1992-93. Now, of course, they weren't household names then, but I knew who they were, and I knew what they were up to.
Yeah.
You know, and I built a huge business based on not doing it for the money, but doing it because that was my personal interest.
Right.
So, and that was around the same time that I was really starting to see that I didn't have to have this poverty consciousness anymore, that I had survived this year with very little income, and that the truth was I was still me. I didn't get as many manicures. I didn't go to the mall. You know, I made a lot of changes, but I saw that money no longer defined me. So that was a life-changing moment. And while at the time I thought it was the worst experience I ever had, ultimately I look back on that as the best thing that ever happened to me.
That's so...
was.
Yeah, as painful as that was. So sometimes financial hardship can really be that critical moment that shows us who we really are and helps us create our greatest work. Right? Like the company that you launched.
Through that, I would still be representing art galleries on Rodeo Drive and boutique hotels and shady real estate developers and all of that, which didn't feed my soul at all. You know, now I could sit and not only enjoy the work that I was doing, but I could be passionate about it. I want the whole world to know what Marianne had to say and the whole world to know what Deepak had to say.
Right.
And I did that right up until 2004 when it was all of a sudden it was like, oh, I'm done doing this. What's next? So I shut down a very successful business overnight with no plan B. I just shut it down. And for about 6 weeks, I was in utter panic and fear. Oh, my God, who am I? What am I going to do? Fortunately, I had no credit card debt, so I had credit cards to play with again. And one day, out of the blue, Gay Hendricks called. And he said, I have this idea for a company, for a startup. Come talk to me. And because I wasn't working and I had nothing to do, we went into business. And 6 months later, we had a business that was very successful, which we later sold for $6 million.
Amazing.
But it would have never happened. Now, I personally didn't make $6 million, but we sold it for $6 million because I trusted my gut to say, you know what, this no longer feeds me. Shut it down. And funny thing is, in 2 days, I'm about to do this again. I've been doing a certain kind of work for the last several years, and I'm stopping in a couple of days, and I'm going to take 7 weeks off just to rest, rejuvenate, play tennis, and travel, and see what emerges. What's next for me? What's the next incarnation? The difference is, this time, because I've been through those 2 prior experiences, I have no fear at all. I know that there's something willing to emerge if I'll make the space, the emptiness for it to fall into.
That's beautiful. I cannot wait to see what emerges next and what your next project is. It's really exciting. Congratulations. Thank you so much for sharing that with me, and thank you so much for coming and sharing your money love story. There's a lot of wisdom nuggets in there about about trust and about prosperity consciousness and manifesting and following your passion. Really, really great lessons. Thank you.
Thank you for the work you're doing, because people so need to hear this. They're so in denial and suppressing all this stuff about money, and it's really just a form of energy.
It is.
Just like you want to unstick the stress that's stuck in your neck, you'll go to a chiropractor. We have to, you know, let go of these old beliefs that are running our money stuff. And because my dream, my last job that I'll ever have will be big time philanthropist. I'm a little philanthropist now, but I want to be like Gates level.
That's very cool. Now, if people want to come find out more about you and possibly follow this journey into the next evolution, what's the best place for them to come find out more?
Well, there's a couple of ways. I have a website called soulmatesecret.com, and I have a free newsletter and lots of free stuff. There's a tab called Free Stuff.
Great.
And I have another site called wabisabilove.com. So I blog on both sites, and I'm also at Facebook. You can find me on Facebook.
Okay, fantastic. So go find Arielle and read The Soulmate Secret and Wabi Sabi Love. And if you want more money love stories, visit moneyalovestory.com, where all of these interviews live. And when you go there, you'll find out about my book, Money, A Love Story. And when you purchase the book, you get free access to my 2-hour online event called A Course in Having Enough. And I've got guest experts coming on, Barbara Stanny, Amanda Steinberg, founder of dailyworth.com, and Marianne Williamson. So it's going to be an awesome time, and you can join us for that, moneyalovestory.com. Thank you so much, Arielle. I really appreciate you being here. Bye.
Bye-bye. Take care.